In this video, I'm going to be taking you through step by step how you can set up GPT4All locally on your machine. And then we're going to start jumping into building applications with LangChain to show you the different use cases and see how good these models really are. Now, within this tutorial, I'm going to be taking you through a number of different ways to install it because it can be pretty difficult, as I found out myself. Now, I'm making this video because I've had a number of requests and comments on videos and also through my consultations with clients about the privacy concerns that people have regarding where their information is being sent off to if you're building applications with OpenAI's APIs. What about all my customer data? What about all my organization data? I don't want to be sending that off to them. How can I run this locally, or how can I safeguard that data so that it is protected and not exposed in any unnecessary way? Now, there's not many solutions currently about this issue of data privacy within AI-based applications, but what we're going to be going through today is one most promising solutions to it, which is to start creating powerful language models that are run locally, so we don't even have to send all of our information off to the APIs. We can run it on our machines and eventually run it on our servers that we are deploying our applications to. Now, if you're not familiar with what GPT4All is, it's GPT4All as in for everyone, and it is a open source application, a set of language models that you're able to download and start using locally. And here you can see in their own words, they have demoed data and code to train open source assistant style large language models based on GPT-J and LLaMa. So GPT-J is the open source version of GPT, and LLaMa is Facebook's language model framework that they've released recently, but it's still actually restricted to research purposes only. Now, over the past few days, I've been going over this technology and seeing how far I can push it, how much I can get out of it. So what we're going to be doing in this video is a quick guide on installing, which can be quite difficult. If you're a Mac user like myself, it caused me a lot of issues. I basically spent an entire day trying to get this thing set up. So if you're a Mac user, you'll be getting a crash course on how to get this thing set up. If you're a Windows user, I think you're going to be having a lot easier time, so you'll be able to skip ahead, but we're going to get stuck into installing this now. I'm going to be taking us through a number of different ways of actually implementing this code and using these language models, but the end goal here and the final product that we're going to get to is a custom knowledge-based chatbot, like many of the videos that I've done previously, but it's going to be run locally, so you're going to be able to provide your own PDFs or documents. It's going to chop it up, chunk it up, embed it, put it into a vector database that's run locally, and then you're going to be able to query that through a chatbot style interface that has chat history. So a lot to take in there, but we're going to have a custom knowledge chatbot with chat history as the end result. So stick with me because we're going to get there in the end. So let's jump into getting this thing installed on your guys' computer. Now, in order to get started with installing this, we need to head over to the GitHub repo, which I'll be linking in the description. But here we can scroll down and start to take a look at the different ways of getting this installed and to start using it locally. Now, they've actually recently released an application that allows you to run it in a nice application on your laptop. So that's what you can see here. You can download that and have a play around with it and actually test the abilities of it and see how good it is and how it stacks up to the sort of GPT 3.5 Turbo and all of the ones that we're used to playing with. So if you want to check that out, super easy to download and install. You've got the 3 different operating systems here that you can download, but we're actually interested in building applications with this. So being able to use it and chat to it is basically useless to us. May as well just use ChatGPT. So we actually want to get access to these models and interact with them programmatically. So we need to scroll down and actually start building with them. Now, if you head down to the Python client section, we have the first way of getting this set up and installed. So what you're going to need to do is run this pip install nomic command. So if you head over to VS Code here, what you can do is come into your terminal section down the bottom, and then you can run pip install nomic. Now, it's all installed on my computer already, so I can head back and we can copy this code here, which is the basic setup. And here we have it pasted in this. So what you can see here is this is the nomic library that we just installed. You're importing this GPT4All. So in order to test if this is actually working, you need to run Python or Python 3 and then the name of the file. So I've named this nomic setup.py. So now if I run this, you can see that it waits for a bit. So what that's actually going to do is start the download of GPT4All so that it is downloaded on your machine locally. Here in Colombia, my internet is quite slow, so I haven't been able to do it using this method. But if this works for you initially and you're able to start prompting, then you're away to the races and you can start plugging this into all of the stuff we're about to do. But this is essentially the first way of testing if you can get this set up and working. Now, if you run into issues, then you can start troubleshooting it and going through these different stages that I'm going to show you now. So heading back to the GitHub repo, we go back to this Python client section. And now we're going to go through to this link here, which is the official Python bindings for GPT4All. Now, this is called PyGPT4All, and this is what we're going to be using in the next way of installing and setting it up. So as usual, we need to install something, so we can copy this pip install PyGPT4All, and I'm going to head over to this file. All of this code is going to be available for you guys to download. So here we have the basic setup that I'm going to show you in a second, but down in your terminal, you need to go pip install PyGPT4All. All ready set up for me. Then once that's installed, you can head down to the usage section, and it's going to provide us a snippet of how to set things up. So if we copy this and head back, this is essentially what we've got set up here. So this is just importing the modules, setting the model, from the link which you've got here. And here in the code, what we have is a way to load the model. So what we have is GPT4All and then the route to where the model is stored on our computer. So you're going to need to download this file. I'm going to have a link to it in the description, but over on the side here, you can see a folder called models, and we have the GPT4All converted, which is the model we're going to be using. And then we have a second one here, which we're going to be discussing later. So what you need to do is download them using a link that I'll provide in the description. Now you have to get this exact one, and I had a nightmare trying to get my hands on this because the ones that they actually provide a lot of the time through the documentation, they need to go through this conversion process in order to get them to the state where they can work. So I'm going to save you a couple hours of headache by just providing you with a direct link to the converted model that should be ready to work as soon as possible for you locally. So head to the description and download this GPT4All converted.bin and then put it into your models file here. And then you can come back and now we can check this code. Yep, it all looks good. Here we have the prompt that we're putting into the model. And then we can come back, save this, Command S, and then go Python 3 PyGPT. Then we can go Python 3 or Python, whichever your system setup is, and then the name of your file. So this one for me is PyGPT4All setup. So if I run this, then it's going to run this completion. Once upon a time, once upon a time, 100 million years ago, dinosaurs ruled the earth. And it's written a little story for us here. Now, if this has worked for you, that is great news. But if you're a Mac user, you likely had a little bit of trouble and it's not able to give this output yet. So I'm going to help you through a crash course on how I was able to get ChatGPT to help me solve this, which saved me a lot of time. So if you're using Anaconda or Conda, that was what was causing the issues for me. So I had to actually uninstall Anaconda fully. I have all of these instructions in a document down in the description if you want to go through this and follow this, but I'll just briefly run through it now. I had to uninstall Anaconda, then I had to download and install MiniForge following these instructions here. So once I had MiniForge installed, I had to set up a virtual environment so that I can install all of the packages onto this virtual environment that was separate. So I know it sounds complicated, but all of these things are going to be in the description for any Mac user that struggled. So you can just follow through the steps that I did in order to get this virtual environment set up that is working correctly. So as you can see down here, I'm actually in a virtual environment called GPT4All. Now, if you're not using Conda or Anaconda, you might not be running into any of these issues, so that's great. But if you are, then you can follow those instructions in the description. Now that we're able to get a basic setup running with this little script here, we can now get onto a couple more advanced applications using LangChain, which is the really exciting stuff. So if we head over to basic LangChain here, this is essentially going to be doing the same thing, but using prompt templates and chains from LangChain. So if you're following along and want to reuse this code, you can download all the code from the GitHub repo in the description, but we're going to be going through this now. So the key thing here is to get LangChain installed, but you need to get the correct version. Now, because this is such a cutting edge library, it is being updated every couple of days, and you will run into issues if you're not specifically mentioning the version of LangChain you want to install. So I'll just run you through that now. Now, whenever you're watching this video, I urge you to head to this link here, PyPy, which is a Python package index, and you're going to be able to check out the most current version, which finally I did this literally yesterday and it's already been updated again. So this thing is being updated nearly every day or two. So in order to prevent any issues, you need to specify the exact version you want to get installed, but make sure it's the latest version. I'm going to be leaving a link to this website in the description so you can check what the most up-to-date version is when you install. So in order to install the correct version of LangChain, what you need to do is copy this, then head back to VS Code. Then you need to go pip install LangChain, but at the end of it, go equals, and then enter in the latest version here, which is 0.0.149. So you'll see it will actually update it for me because I had 0.148 installed. So make sure you're getting the latest version and you're actually specifying that with the equals and then the version after that. So now that we have it installed, all of these things up here should be working for you. As you can see, we're using the GPT4All import from the LLMs package. So same sort of thing here. We have the local path for the model that we're working with, which you can see over here. The callback manager, which you need to set up as part of LangChain. And then we have a template here. Now, this is just an example one that you could use. Here we have a question and then the templated insertion of the question here. And then the answer lets things step by step. So it puts the model into a chain of thought style of answer, which typically works better for these models because they're not as good at responding as you're used to with these other OpenAI models. And so for the rest of this, we're just setting up the prompt, which is using the prompt template we've provided, the input variable of the question. So whenever we ask a question to this, as we do down here and here, it's going to be replacing that question parameter with the question that we're setting. So in this method here, which we're just hard coding the question, which is what is NFL team won the Super Bowl in the year Justin Bieber was born. We can hard code in the question here, and then below it, we also have a way of accepting user input through the terminal. So we'll just run through both of them now quickly. The final part of the script here is to use LLM So we've set up our chain here using the LLM and the prompt we have, and then the question, and then the LLM chain is going to run that process. So now if I go to the terminal and I go Python 3 basic LangChain setup.py, run that. It's going to set up the model, and then it's going to ask the question that we've hard coded in here. What NFL team, as you can see here. And now it's going to show you the output of the model in the terminal here. So does a bit of thinking. Now here we get an example of the actual quality of the output of these models. So we're asking a question, what is NFL team won the Super Bowl in the year Justin Bieber was born? So it should go, okay, what year was Justin Bieber born? Okay, and then use its prior knowledge of both who Justin Bieber is and then of that particular year and who won the Super Bowl to give us the answer. And this chain of thought method is supposed to help it get there. But as you can see, it sort of just goes on with gibberish. I've seen other people get correct responses with this, but I haven't seemed to be able to do it. This potentially could go back to the fact that, as we can see here on the GitHub repo, they do have a GPT4All J model, and they do have just a GPT4All model. So maybe the differences between GPT-J and then the LLaMa model they're using could determine the quality of the output. But I urge you to actually just download the other model. Unfortunately, my internet's a bit slow here, so I don't have time for this video. But here you can see they're using the GPT4All J version. You need to convert it, but once you convert it, you can actually test the output back to back and see if it's actually getting you closest. First example of getting output from these is not that great, so we're going to keep going and see how good we can get a custom knowledge chatbot to work with this as well. And just quickly, you can turn this into a user input based bot by uncommenting this line. We'll comment this one out. So this is essentially just asking for a input. So when this line runs, it's going to pop a little input thing down in the terminal, and then whatever you enter into that is going to be submitted as a question and then work back into it. I just comment it out and I save the file again, and then I'm able to run this again. And now you can see down the bottom it's saying enter your question, and I can enter the same thing. So as you can see, it didn't quite get the answer again, but this shows you how you can use a variable input and a user input from the terminal to ask questions to this model. So next, we're going to be going on to creating a custom knowledge base and then being able to query that base in sort of a one-directional format. So this is like creating a LLaMa index that you're able to ask one question to by querying that index. So this one here is called custom knowledge query.py. And we can go through this, and I've got a little bit of information on the script here. This script allows you to create a vector store from a file and query it with a question that you hard code the question in. It shows you how you could send questions to a GPT4All custom knowledge base and receive answers. If you want a chat style interface using a similar custom knowledge base, you can check out the other file, which we're going to be going over last. So this starts off a little bit differently. Here you can see we have the GPT4All model path, which is the same as previously, but here we have the LLaMa path. So you're going to have to download via a link I'll provide in the description. It took me a while to find all these different models to use that got this thing working, because making them sort of talk to each other can be quite a bit of a struggle. So all of the download links for these are going to be in the description, but you need to download the specific model, which is a LLaMa model that allows you to use the embeddings process of the LLaMa model. And that's done through here. So what you see on the left side here is the models. We have both the GPT4All converted, and we also have this LLaMa model on the side. And so what we're doing here is taking in an example document, which is the state of the union. Here you can see it's up in the docs file here. So we use a shortened version first, test that it works, and then we use the full version. So this is just the state of the union speech from Joe Biden, I assume. Talks about Ukraine, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to be taking that, indexing it in the same way you would into a LLaMa index, but we're going to be doing this all manually. The process here is to use this loader here, which is a text loader. This is coming from LangChain. So this is going to take the docs from the docs folder. It's going to take the shortened state of the union.txt file that we have. Then it's going to create the LLaMa embeddings model that we're going to use to embed all of that information into our vector store. And then we're going to initialize the LLM as GPT4All with the path to the model that we referenced up here. So this is essentially all the setup. And then we have a couple functions that's going to allow us to create this custom knowledge base index. So first of all, depending on the size of the document, you may need to chunk the text up. So we have a split chunks function here that's using this particular function from LangChain. We can specify the chunk size, all that sort of stuff, but I just leave that there for now. And then we need to actually create the index in the same way you would with something like LLaMa index. And then that's going to take in the chunks we just created, and it's going to return an index. And we're using this FAISS package that's part of the LangChain vector store. So this comes with as a supported way of creating a vector store or a vector database with LangChain, which is very handy. And what this is going to do is return that search index for us so that we can start using it. And then finally, we have the similarity search function, which is going to take in the user query, and it's going to take in the index we've created and give back essentially the match documents that match the query. So this is what we're going to take into the final generation phase of, okay, we have all the context, now let's actually answer the question. So this is the same sort of custom knowledge base chatbot style setup. So now what we need to do is actually call all of these different functions. We need to take in our documents, create an index, and then we're actually going to save the index so that we don't have to keep doing it again. Because as you'll see, these models can take a very long time to generate all of the embeddings and create the index. So I'm going to have this line here, which allows us to save it to a local file so that we don't have to run over this every time you boot the app, which is something I'd suggest. So first off, in creating our index, it's going to need to create the docs using the loader up here, which we've created. So this is reference to the shortened state of the union text, the little slice of it we're going to test first. Then down here, you have the chunks, which it then takes the documents that it's taken from that text file, and then it's going to split that into chunks. And then we're going to take those chunks and we're going to create the index out of it. So on your first time actually running the script, what you're going to want to do is actually comment all of this out, I'd say. And then when you run this, it's going to go through, it's going to take your document, it's going to chunk it up, create the index, and then it's going to save it to this name that you put here. And as you can see on the left here, I've actually already got this set up here. So this is the state of the union index. This is the little slice that we were talking about before. So this is a small index on the shortened set of text that we've provided. And once you've actually got it saved there and ready to go, then you can comment this out and you can uncomment all of this below. Then every time you run the app from then on, you're not going to have to wait a few minutes for this to index the data and save it. You can actually just pull it from a local file by using this line here. So pulls from the same embeddings that you did to create it, which we've set up there. And then you're going to be pulling from the local files on the side to get the index set up. And now finally, we can actually query our custom index. So you have the question here, hard coding the question in to summarize the contents about NATO and its purpose. So what I've done here is actually taken, just so it's a little bit more context, I've done the full document. It's taken quite a while off screen, but I've got the full State of the Union here indexed and saved using this method above. And what I'm going to do is ask it to summarize the comments about NATO and its purpose. And here we have another prompt template, which is essentially using LangChain to help get the right outputs out of it and essentially frame this up. And here we have the similarity search based on the question and the index we're doing. So it's going to search that vector database for the most relevant bits of information on it, retrieve that, and it's going to give us back and match docs and sources. And what it's going to do is essentially, please use the following context to answer questions. The information that we get back from that similarity search is going to be injected in place of this context variable. And then the question of the user that we took up here that we've hard coded is going to be put in here. So it's essentially, what's the question? Okay, let me grab some context that's relevant to that question, put it into the prompt template. Okay, and then what were they asking for in the first place? Bang. Now answer the question with all of this context. So this is the basic sort of retriever generator system right in front of your eyes. And then again, just to make it very easy for this model, we're using chain of thought prompting. If you don't know what that is, check out my prompt engineering video. It's up here or here. I never get it right. But let's think step by step so it actually thinks through it and it increases the accuracy of the output. And then finally, what we have at the bottom is just the LangChain side of things, which is packaging this all up, taking the template, inserting the variables. Here you can see, getting the context back from the similarity search, and then sending it off in LLaMachain.run function. And then we're going to get to see the response. So let's give this a test out. The comment is summarize the comments about NATO and its purpose. Now we can have a quick look at the State of the Union, the full text. I'm sure you're familiar with what the State of the Union sort of talks about. And then we can go back to this here. So now that we have everything set up to query this index, we're going to be able to go down to the bottom and into the terminal and go Python 3 or Python and run custom knowledge query.py. And it's going to take essentially all of the information from the State of the Union index, which we've created. It's going to query it with this question, summarize the comments about NATO and its purpose, and then return the answer to that by injecting it into this prompt template. So let's see what we get. So it's init from file, which is going to save us a lot of time. Actually, I forgot to do one thing, which is comment all of this out as well. So if you are running it from a loaded index, then you don't need to do any of the create index, of course. So make sure you head up there and comment that out, and then you can come back down. It's going to save you a ton of time. We'll save it again, clear the output, and run that again and see how quickly it can do it this time. So bam, straight into answering the question. So here you can see it's actually starting to spit out the things that it's retrieved from the custom knowledge base. So it's got a couple little snippets of text from the speech. Okay, it's got a couple mentions of NATO in there. It seems to be doing a pretty good job. And then it's going to take all of that context that it's grabbed, put it into the prompt template, and answer the question with that context. Okay, and here we have our answer. It seems to have queried our custom knowledge base correctly. We've got all the context. It's asked the question, summarize the comments about NATO and its purpose. So NATO is an alliance that was created to defend its member states, So it's actually done a pretty good job when you've given it a custom knowledge base compared to when it was actually querying its own knowledge that it was trained on. So perhaps this is a good example of, okay, maybe the training data was not as extensive and familiar with current events and the history of the world as we are used to with ChatGPT, because it just seems to know everything because it had obviously has a better training data set. So these models, maybe they are better to be used with your own data set rather than asking it to answer questions like a ChatGPT or a GPT-3. So that was an example of how we can create our own custom knowledge-based index and query that and draw insights out of it without ever having to use an API or OpenAI and send our data off. So everything was done locally on the computer. We have the LLaMa CCP embeddings that we use for the embeddings, and then we have GPT4All to generate the answers. And now we're onto the final example of what you can build with this. Now, I took a while to get this thing set up and using LangChain with these custom models, but what we have here is a custom knowledge chatbot in the same way that my previous videos went over, where I'm able to chat back and forth with a chat history about a custom knowledge base. So we're going to go through many of the same steps we did just before, but instead of allowing it to just hard code a query or only take one query and get the information back, we're going to be able to have a chat to this thing, and it's going to remember the context of the chat so that it's kind of like a ChatGPT experience, but it's limited to the information that we're giving it. So most of this is the exact same as the previous example. If you go down here, you'll see many of the same sort of functions. But here we're setting up the language model as GPT4All. I've put in here a context limit, which I believe is the max tokens for this particular model. And then we have a lot of the same stuff we had before, which is to generate the index. So all of this code is still in here if you want to use it on its own. But because I've already got the index saved from the previous step, we're able to actually just load the index directly and start getting into using this as a chatbot. So as you can see at the top here, I've got the index passed as full SOTU index. And here on the side, you can see I have the full SOTU index folder here, which is the index we're going to be querying. So same sort of thing. You're going to want to uncomment all of this and get it to generate you an index. But what we're going to be doing is loading it from a local one to save us time. The key thing here is to use this conversational retrieval chain from LLM, which allows us to pass in the LLM we want to use, which is GPT4All, which we set up here. And then it's going to take the index that we'd created and then use the index as a retriever function. I put in the max token limit here. I've had a couple issues with the max token limit on this, causing it to break. So I've set that down to a conservative 400. Now that's going to limit the amount that it retrieves from the index to 400 tokens. And then we're going to get this QA here that we query within this chatbot loop. And then the rest of this is a bit of a standard chatbot loop here. We have a while loop, and here we have a chat history empty list. And then we're taking the query from a user input via terminal, and we are passing that query as the question to this Q&A conversational retriever chain. And we're also passing in the chat history. So every time it goes through this loop, it's going to take the input from the user. It's going to query it with the chat histories, which on the first time is going to be empty. But after every query, it's going to be appending the messages to this chat history. And then every time you message it, it's going to be remembering what was said before. So what we can do here is actually save this and then come down here and go Python 3. And then I can run this. It's all set up here to go. And it's asking me for a question. So I can say, what did the president say about Ukraine? Now, this process can take a very long time, as you're seeing here. This is, I think, a sign that this kind of technology isn't quite at the level that it needs to be to create fully fledged custom knowledge systems that I run locally. But I think it's a good example of getting familiar with these now while they're available. And I think in the next couple of months and years, these things are going to become a lot more powerful and a lot easier to run, faster, etc. So just getting familiar with them now and how LangChain allows you to interact with them and set up chat loops like this that have a custom knowledge base to talk to is pretty cool. So here we can see I've asked, what did the president say about Ukraine? It's got the context that it's dragged in here using the prompt template that we can see. And then the answer that it's giving me is, he said that he is always there for them and their potential to live life without fear or discrimination, da 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 da. And now we can actually test that the chat history is working by asking a question, referencing that answer, and then see if it gets it right. So I'm going to ask it the question of who are they being discriminated by and see if it can pick up on what I'm trying to talk about. So as you can see, the quality of these kind of custom knowledge chatbots with history is much, much lower when you're using models like this. And I think that comes down to not using the OpenAI embeddings. I think the ADA 002 text embedding model that we typically use is a lot better. It's got 1,536 dimensions, I believe. So it's a very, very complex and advanced embedding model. And I'm not too sure about the LLaMa embeddings model that we're using here. I think just the combination of a different sort of locally run and open source embedding model combined with a locally run and open source language model to generate the answers gives us a pretty low quality result. But I think, as I said before, testing these out and getting familiar with running them is important at this stage in their development. And so it seems like it's got the answer right after a long wait. The Ukrainian people have repeatedly shown that. So I think it's picked up on who I was talking about. But again, the quality of output on these things are not that great right now. But that's been about a brief rundown of these different use cases for using GPT4All and how you can get a custom chatbot. You can get a custom knowledge base and query it. You can steal all of this code and put it into your own projects and start playing around with it. And I hope that the installation side of things was covered in a good enough way, because I had a nightmare trying to get this set up on my Mac. So hopefully one of the ways that I provided works. And if you're a Mac user and you have had trouble, then be sure to check out the documents in the description where I'll give you a full rundown of how I got it working on my Mac. But that's about it for the video, guys. I hope this has helped you figure out how you can potentially address privacy concerns and the fact that we're sending all of our data off to these companies like OpenAI, and that maybe local models like this are the way forward. But I think in the current state that they are, probably not the case just yet. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, be sure to head down below and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like. It would mean the world to me. I make a lot of tutorial style videos like this to help entrepreneurs and people looking to build businesses and build applications with AI. I try to simplify it down as much as possible and give away the code. So if that sounds interesting to you, I've got a ton more on my channel you should check out. You're probably seeing it in the recommendation bar right now, but there's a lot of stuff on there, Slack bots, etc., customized chatbots. So check that out. And if you have any things that you would like me to make videos on in future, I actually made this one based off a comment that I received on a previous video. So I am giving you guys what you want, and this is actually super interesting stuff. So if you have any ideas of videos you'd like to see or queries that you've run into, then be sure to leave them in the comments below, and I'd love to get back to you as soon as possible with the video in the next couple of weeks. And of course, if this has lit up any light bulbs in your head and you think you could utilize this kind of technology in some kind of application, then be sure to head down below. You can contact me as a consultant. I'm available. You can book a call with me in the description and in the pinned comment. And from there, we can go on and talk about feasibility, how much this could potentially cost to build. And if you want to move forward and work with my development company, then we can discuss how you can work with us and the kind of things that we can get set up for you. So that's all available in the description. Now, my development company has also got a newsletter that we've just started. So if you want to sign up to that and be getting the hot takes and juicy AI news delivered straight to your email inbox, then you can sign up to that in the description and the pinned comment. And likewise, my AI entrepreneurship Discord is available in the description if you want to join a community of like-minded entrepreneurs, developers, marketers, etc. We're all in there having a chat about all the things relevant in AI at the moment. But that about wraps it up for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.